Christian McCollum with the PlayAction Pod, back here again with Chris Buchignani from the Obligatory PSU Podcast. The guys over at For the Bloggy hooked us up. So make sure you check out For the Bloggy and make sure you check out the Obligatory PSU Pod. Chris, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Christian.
All right, cool. So we wanted to dive in with Penn State. You guys got a highlight game this weekend, but first off, just overview. What's it looking like for the Nittany Lions heading into the season here?
Well, it's interesting. My feeling is, and I've heard many other folks around the program, a lot of local media echo the same thing. This is one of the toughest Penn State teams to get a read on in quite a while because of the way the season went last year. There is a definite chance this team could come out of the gate like gangbusters and win double-digit games this season. I mean, to the point of contending for an 11-win season with really Ohio State being the only team on their schedule I don't think they match up with player for player talent-wise. But you could just as easily talk yourself into a 7-5 or 6-6 season. Now, maybe it's because it's the summer and hope springs eternal, right? And I got a little bit of a homer vibe going. I'm feeling more positive than negative. And I think one of the key things to impress upon fans who are not close to the program is that one of the major factors affecting Penn State last year, when you consider the fact that Pennsylvania was one of the states and Penn State was one of the universities that took strict adherence to coronavirus protocols like most seriously, James Franklin broke in 4 new assistant coaches last year, including a new offensive coordinator who was also our starting quarterback Sean Clifford's second position coach. Mike Yursich is now his third. And defensive line, offensive line, wide receivers, all key position groups brought in new assistants who never got a chance to actually meet their guys face-to-face. Didn't have a chance to be hands-on with them during the spring. And then, you had the disastrous on-again, off-again Big Ten season, so they're trying to do installs via Zoom. Coaches are trying to get a sense of who their players are through a computer screen. And I really think that inability to have those new assistants get anything even approaching a normal offseason with their new charges really was manifest on the field last year. So even though the record was very ugly and the start was historically terrible for Penn State, I think you can look at James Franklin's body of work. You can look at the caliber of assistants he's brought in. You can look at the talent on the roster and say there's plenty of reason to believe that last year was something of an aberration and that it can get back to being where Penn State has been for the last 4 or 5 years under James.
You mentioned the new OC. I mean, what's expected out of Yursich here? What's the offense going to look like here this year?
Well, it's interesting. James Franklin is not typically a guy to be quick with the hook with his coaches. In fact, since he's gotten here, I think he's become more infamous for loyalty to guys than a willingness to pull the trigger quickly. But Mike Yursich was a coach who he has coveted for several years. They've danced around a couple of times, and it's always just been circumstances, money, or both. I think if you look at the offense Joe Moorhead ran when Penn State was winning and contending for Big Ten titles in 2016 and 2017, a lot more wide open. James Franklin has talked about using the field sideline to sideline, and I think that's the type of offense he's most comfortable in, going all the way back to what he ran at Maryland, the kind of offense they were at Vanderbilt. And I just think philosophically Kirk Ciarrocca was never a great fit with James Franklin. So when the opportunity to bring in a plus coordinator like Yursich came up with the unexpected firing of Tom Herman at Texas, James just jumped on it. I think he truly wants to get this program back into conference title contention and eventually playing for a playoff spot. And, look, like my co-host Brandon Noble says, and he knows football well, it's a very unfair sport and a very unfair profession, coaching. So you hate to see a guy fired after 1 year, but I think everybody's excited about the dynamism Yursich can bring, something a little bit more reminiscent of when Joe Moorhead was here and we were having a ton of success.
You talked about, you can see anything from 11-1 to close to 500. I mean, you guys can get a good read on what you're going to get right out of the gate. I mean, like I said, big noon kick, Wisconsin. What are going to be the keys to this game?
Well, I think a lot of it is going to go back to two of the things I've already talked about, which is what is the level of improvement with a normal offseason with Mike Yursich coaching Sean Clifford. Phil Troutwine, our offensive line coach, who came over from Boston College and had a lot of success developing NFL caliber linemen there. What kind of production is he going to get out of the O-line? And then schematically, what can Penn State do to counter Wisconsin's defense? Because as much as you know the personality of Wisconsin's offense, it's been pretty much the same going back to the Alvarez days in the early 90s. What I'm most concerned about playing the Badgers this weekend is their defense. They're bringing back 6 of their 7 players in the back 7. All 4 starting defensive backs are seniors, 3 returners. Their linebacking core is absolutely nasty. So Penn State's got a great stable of running backs, very great at the skill positions, deep at tight end, great wide receivers. It's all about O-line, quarterback play, and scheme. Can Penn State get a couple of haymakers in early and put the Badgers back on their heels? Because, again, going back to they are what you think they are, they're not going to be a team that's built to come back. So Penn State's got to be careful with the football and do what they can to build a double-digit lead.
I think you're in for the Bloggies Bankroll Challenge. Who are you taking? Badgers minus 5.5, Penn State plus 5.5. Who you got?
Again, there's probably a little Homer vibe going on, but I do really feel like these are pretty evenly matched teams. They're both very talented. They both had disappointing seasons last year. I am going to take the Nittany Lions, but it's something of a coin flip. There's no doubt. I'm just going on a little bit of a gut feeling here, but I think Penn State needs this win more than Wisconsin does, because Wisconsin plays in the West and avoids Ohio State this year. So they can come out of it with an L and still be in great shape to, burnish their resume playing Notre Dame in a few weeks and get back to the Big Ten title game. So I think the motivation is going to be a little bit more for Penn State. And I just love the talent we have on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Mike Yurcich is the X factor, and Nittany Lions get it done.
So Chris is saying to take the points. We're going to check in with you. We're going to hold you guys accountable for this.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
So like I said, check out For the Bloggy, and please check out Obligatory Pod. What's the social media handle for you guys, Chris?
Sure. You can follow us. All our accounts are at Obligatory PSU. You can find us wherever you get a podcast. If you type in obligatory, it's like the first thing that pops up. There aren't too many competitors in that space. That's great. And if you're in the Mid-Atlantic or in the Northeast, Nesson, Masson, AT&T Sportsnet Pittsburgh, and NBC Sports Philadelphia. You can watch the Obligatory PSU pregame show, multiple airings Friday and Saturday. So check us out on TV, pod. We're on the web at statecollege.com. We're all over the place. And I appreciate you having me, man. This is great. I always enjoy talking to Nittany Lions.
I'm in Springfield, Mass., so I'll be checking you guys out on Nesson.
Oh, sweet. So, very good. Thanks, man.
Yeah, so we appreciate it, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, have a great one.